Welcome back to McNulty's Book Corral. Thanks for checking in. I am doing the promised episode on the shadow, and I'll try and do a better job on this one than I did on the last two. I seem to have kind of verbally fumbled my way through these last couple of episodes, and maybe that's not unusual. Just doing my best here. All right, so this has a twofold purpose. First of all, for some of my younger viewers who have not read a shadow novel, these last few episodes have been about just doing an introduction to it. I always need to stress that I am not an expert on anything I'm talking about here. I am just a fan and collector. The only thing I'm an expert on is I know what I like in life. That's it. That's all I have going on, which my critics will agree with. Let me start by stating that in addition to the other episodes, you have a similarity here in that my introduction to the shadow came from the Bantam books reprints. And here is, of course, the first one, which I've shown before, The Living Shadow. I read them. I actually read these Bantams in order of when they appeared in the late 60s. At the same time, I was reading Doc Savage. So by the late 60s, I was still reading the Hardy Boys and Brains Benton, but I had gotten into Doc Savage, The Shadow, Ray Bradbury, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the Sherlock Holmes stories, Mickey Spillane, and Ian Fleming. So I had a really interesting period of in my youth in the late 60s, which was everybody has their golden age, don't they? All right, so Bantam Books is putting out these pulp reprints, and a whole new generation is introduced to this stunning material. The excitement, the whirlwind plots, even the hamminess of it, it's all striking a chord with a new generation, and it has not abated since then. It is continuing to this day. So just some of them, Gangdom's Dune, what was this? This was number 7. These are out of order. These Bantam books were great. And what did they cost? They cost, oh my God, they cost 60 cents. And that is just, this is amazing. So this is the 1970 edition, and it just went flying in a room full of wacky books. I just dropped it. So here it is. All right, Gangdom's Dune. I'm sorry, I dropped it. Hidden Death. This was number 6. And anyway, so we're going to get into Walter B. Gibson was the primary writer on The Shadow. Just wanted to show you some of these. The Ghostmakers. This one's a little thinner. It was number 5. I don't think I have number 2 here. I don't know what I did with it. Death Tower. These were all so good. So what you get here in these books, and I'll give you a little more background in a minute, but what you get with these Bantam books, The Shadow Laughs, is you get pre-war Manhattan. You get the back alleys of New York. You get the gangster era. You get the FBI era. You get crime running rampant in this wild era in the 1930s, where this type of thing was happening for real, the crime I'm talking about. And the FBI, and J. Edgar Hoover starts to track people down. This is the era of Bonnie and Clyde, Dillinger, and all of those people, Pretty Boy Floyd. This is that era in New York. And The Shadow comes along to solve crime. He is, in his own way, kind of an evil character. All right, so The Shadow first appeared in a 1930 radio program. I've listened to many of these old-time radio programs. I used to have a box set of old-time radio programs. It was so great I actually gave it to a friend. A relative who appreciated it. I have to downsize sometimes, But the old Shadow radio program was really fun to listen to. This is where the phrase, "Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men?" The Shadow knows, that phrase originated with the radio program as the lead in to it. That has become an iconic tagline for the Shadow pulps. A year later, the first book was published that I showed you, The Living Shadow, and that was Walter B. Gibson. I own 3 copies of it, actually, or 2 copies, I'm sorry. I have the Bantam, and then I have the Sanctum Books reprint of The Living Shadow. The Living Shadow, I recommend reading it in order if you can. The Living Shadow is kind of a classic of pulp fiction and adventure fiction. On the aftermarket, this is really expensive. Some of the Bantams you can find lower grade copies a little cheaper. All of the Shadow books, even though most of them have been reprinted, I don't believe they all have. Sanctum Books and Bantam, they did a lot. It is hard to get them at a good price, and that's the fault of the copyright owner. They turned it over to James Patterson, and you've already heard me talk about that. Enough of him. They're out there if you're interested in finding them. You can find copies at a lower grade. So we have the Shadow. The Living Shadow appears in 31. I don't think it's ever been out of print, really. I mean, they even reprinted it in the 40s in a hardcover. Walter B. Gibson was the primary author of The Shadow. Okay, I just stepped away. I had to go grab a book I forgot. So that book is Walter B. Gibson and The Shadow by Thomas J. Schimeld. It's forwarded with a foreword by Robert W. Gibson, his son, Robert Gibson's son. This is published by McFarland. And this is a short, but I think good biography of Gibson, published by McFarland way back in... when did they publish this? 2003, so I've had this book a long time. Illustrated with photos. If you're interested in learning more about Walter B. Gibson, check this out. McFarland might have this in paperback now. It is a good short biography. I don't know if there's any others. There probably is. All right, so Walter B. Gibson wrote most of the Shadow novels. He wrote 282 Shadow novels out of the 325 total titles. That's an incredible accomplishment, as you've heard from my other episodes, that to be able to sit at a typewriter and let the language flow in a reasonable narrative, and then of course rewriting would happen, but that's pretty awesome. That's really talented. So Walter B. Gibson wrote most of the Shadow novels under the pen name of Maxwell Grant. Sad story I have to tell. Here's another one of the Nostalgia Ventures and Sanctum Books reprinting the original covers. I wrote to Walter B. Gibson in early 1970s, and he answered me. And he sent me an index card that said Walter B. Gibson, Maxwell Grant, a.k.a. Walter B. Gibson. That's all it said. And I have lost that index card with his signature. Life is not perfect, folks. Sometimes things get lost. What a shame, but I did have it. Here's another one. Great cover artwork, as you would expect from the pulp fiction era. So a couple of these here. So just to give you a flavor of Gibson's talent, all right? So I'm going to read just a little bit from The Serpents of Shiva, and just to give you a flavor of this, how he would set this up in his stories to hook you in. Talk about classic hooks, to have strong imagery, swift action, snappy dialogue. These are all hallmarks of pulp fiction. Serpents of Shiva, Chapter 1, Walls of Death. The taxicab swung from the avenue, rolled past the lighted front of a big apartment house. With that, the bleak darkness of the side street engulfed it, save for the twinkle of the cab's tail light that formed a feeble, fading dot. That's your first paragraph. That image is embedded in your mind. You can see it. A chill wind swept that forgotten street like the icy fingers of a death devil clutching for human prey. The gust whistled, whimpered through the open windows of the cab, but the lone passenger did not notice it. You see how you're getting caught up in the moment with this. This is why pulp fiction narratives are so much fun to read. When they're done well, as they have been in, as I've told you, with Doc Savage and The Spider and with The Shadow, it's great. He was too busy craning toward the blackish, tomb-like fronts of brownstone houses. His squinty eyes were looking for a number, while his pudgy lips muttered oaths because he could not see it. Just a a quick couple of short paragraphs from Walter B. Gibson. He was really quite an imagistic guy. Walter B. Gibson is, to me, again, Lester Dent and Walter B. Gibson really stand at the top of a very large mountain of writers with their incredible talent. Really admire them. Behind me on this bookcase here somewhere is Walter B. Gibson's Twilight Zone stories. He wrote some Twilight Zone stories late in his career, and I'm going to probably have to go back and cover that again. I did an episode on the Twilight Zone early on here when I started this channel. I might come back and talk about those. Walter B. Gibson wrote some under contract with the late, great Rod Serling. What a combination. So Walter B. Gibson was, by the way, a magician. So he knew Harry Blackstone and Harry Houdini, and he wrote books for them. He ghost wrote for them. So this is a guy with an incredible background and incredible talent. Walter B. Gibson, who wrote The Shadow. And finally, we're going to end with another Will Murray. I talked about this before. Here's The Sinister Shadow, one of two books where Will Murray brought Doc Savage and The Shadow together. I think they're great. I'm not much of, I guess I'm not all that critical about maybe I can't see it objectively, just because I enjoyed it so much. You know what? That's the way it is. I like them, and I know what I like. I like Will Murray a great deal, as I've mentioned in the Doc Savage episode. So he has two of these on the market, and if you get a chance, try and find some of these, either the Bantam reprints or the Sanctum books, these magazine-sized reprints. These are doubles, so you're going to get here. You're getting the Madrigal's. Boy, can I speak English! The Madrigal's Mystery and Serpents of Siva in one riveting volume on this stuff. And in this one, we get Castle of Crime and Dead Man's Chest. You get 2 for 1 if you can find these. Some of these, I'm sad to say, are quite expensive on the aftermarket. I wish that there would be a publisher that would just put out, they should just let, Condé Nast Publishers owns the copyright on this, and they don't handle it very well. And I don't like being negative there. I'm being critical. They just don't handle it very well. And there's no reason why these books can't be, constantly in print, the entire series, in trade paperbacks. They would sell. I mean, people are going out of their way looking for this stuff now. Bit of a rant, bit of a babble. What do I do best, my friends? I read books and I babble about them. I hope you find this interesting, and I'm going to conclude it with, stay well, stay happy, feed your brain. Read The Shadow by Walter B. Gibson and a few other writers too.